Yeah.
Unconscious bias often creates sort of an invisible tax on the team. Because let's say, I mean, I don't think you would do this, but let's say you call me honey. And so now you probably don't mean any harm when you call me honey, but now I'm a little annoyed that I feel like, is Alex taking me seriously?
So I didn't call her honey, by the way, just for the record.
Yeah, he did.
Yep.
But now it's like this thing in my mind, and I'm not doing absolutely my best work. Or let's say that you interrupt someone, and that consistently the women on the team are being interrupted more than the men. And the more often it happens, the more irritating it is for the women on the team, or they just shut down. And so now they're not doing their best work, but also the team is not getting the best ideas out of the team. There's a lot of evidence that shows when everyone on a team participates roughly the same amount, that the team performs better. And so if you're sort of consistently interrupting or shutting down some members of the team, it hurts that person, but it also hurts the whole team's performance. When we're being biased, we're not respecting one another's individuality, and we're not going to collaborate as well as a team. So that's the problem. So what are some examples of bias? I'll give you some of the ones. So one of the things I did when I wrote Just Work, because I know that I exhibit bias like everyone. So I hired a bias buster. I hired someone to read through the book and to point out problematic language that I was using. And one of the things that she pointed out is that I tend to use sloppy site metaphors. So the first chapter of the book is now called "We Can't Fix Problems We Refuse to Notice." But at first it was, "You can't fix problems you don't see." And of course, I didn't really mean physically see. I meant notice. And so it was an ableist language. And I knew that it was right. And I care about words, like words matter to me. So I wanted to use the right words. And I realized that I was probably frustrating one of the other editors of the book who's blind, one of the clearest thinkers I know, who notices everything, but he's blind. And so I really cared about fixing this, and I really thought I had fixed it. But when I turned the book into the publisher, I thought, well, I should do a quick control find and make sure. In a 350-page book, guess how many times I had used sloppy site metaphors? 99. Okay, 99 times.
Yeah, okay.
And so I was shocked. So this can be, you really need to be persistent with yourself, be patient with yourself. Like self-laceration was not going to help solve the problem, but I did need to be persistent about my efforts to fix this problem. So that's an example of biased language.
So, but it seems that it is linked, or it should be linked to your values, right? So if there are things which you value, so for example, like that you valued how that person actually was basically understanding the book and how that segment was understanding the book. And so that kind of led you to be open to it, right? So it does seem to maybe start from, what's important to you, and that can then lead you to being courageous enough, I would say, to see
to notice
how you are, to notice to notice how you are, right? Because it can often feel maybe sometimes overwhelming to people like who are listening to think of all the possible things that they could have some bias in, but how do they know the place to start, right? Because like if you gave a list of all the possibilities, it would be like, whoa, okay.
It would be daunting. Yeah. I mean, I will tell you that the bias buster who I hired gave me a list of 8 words that I tend to use that I would be better off not using, that I needed to re-examine. And I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but my first response was, no word in the English language is safe. And it was 8 words. There's 250,000 words. And so it was a tiny fraction. So I think that this is why I like the notion of bias disruptors. you don't have to fix all the world's problems all at once. You don't have to make, and an exhaustive list of biased terms would not be helpful. But what you do need to do is to be willing to hear about it when someone, when you've said something that bothered someone else, that harmed someone else in some way, that reflected a stereotype that you don't believe when you stop to consciously think about it. And so if you're willing to sort of take it as it comes, then it's not that big of a deal.
Okay, so it's being open to it. So when it pops its head up, and it will pop its head up. And if you're open to it, then you'll notice it. But if you're not open to it, it will just be that defensive mode, right? That can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to, and you want to notice your defensive. But it's natural. Like I wrote, in fact, about my defensive. No word is safe in the English language. I think it's important to recognize that, and not to sort of judge yourself or other people too harshly, but to recognize that this stuff is hard. I was working with a CEO, for example, and he was trying to stop standing up in front of the whole company and refer to everyone as guys, because the whole company was not guys. There were women who worked there, and people who are not binary who worked there. And so he was really trying to say folks or you all or whatever, but it took a long time. Some of these habits are deeply ingrained.